And we are live, and I'm not alone. Today we have a very special guest. This is, well, how do you address yourself anymore, my friend?
You know, everybody knows me as Tater. I am Tater the toy guy. Most of my friends call me Tater. I'm Nathan Salyer, but only my wife calls me that.
And nobody
only
else
when
is,
I'm in
is
trouble.
allowed to. Only when you're in trouble as well. Well, you are here tuning in for the ultimate guide to 80s horror films.
I'm
Myself,
excited.
Rob McCallum, joined by Tater, of course, all in support of Planet Cool Stuff Kickstarter campaign that is like a week away. I think there's 8 days left, and we were well past the goal, but we're just trying to see how far we can get it. Maybe I should introduce a stretch goal. What would be a cool stretch goal, Tater?
Ooh, a stretch goal for Planet Cool Stuff.
You can think about it. We can come back to it at the end of the show if you want.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, we'll do that. Again, if you've been following along these streams the last week and a bit, we are tackling several lists that have been put out there purporting to be the best of whatever topic that we're looking at. We've looked at NES games, Genesis games, He-Man figures, the best pro wrestlers of all time. And I thought, we need to get into movies a little bit more. We did the best of the 90s movies, which was just, it hurt my head to try to rank so many different genres of films for an entire decade. It was a lot harder than I thought it would be. And thankfully, there was a lot more films that I loved from the 90s than I thought as well. But today we're tackling
that list.
You didn't like that list?
No,
Any of the lists?
Well, no, like where they put Lion King at rank 3 over Schindler's List. It's like, yeah, okay, Lion King's a good movie, but Schindler's List was epic.
Well, I'll let people decide. They can go back and watch, because we looked at a few different lists to see how they compared and contrast with one another. And there are people that probably like The Lion King more than Schindler's List for their own reasons, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be the right answer; it just has to be their answer. Today, 80s horror movies. Tater, what would you say a definition of an 80 horrors film is? Like, how would you describe what you could get if you were going to tell someone to go rent an 80s horror film? Like, what's that broad scope outlook for an 80s horror film?
I think for it to be an 80s horror film, it needs to be almost absurd in a way. Over the top type, either supernatural or, it just needs to be kind of over the top and almost B-movie style. A lot of those movies were not blockbuster movies that we're going to rake in $100 million on opening day, but over the years they have made cult followings to where they have new merchandise, it has to be almost that cheesy style B-movie effect and over the top.
I think,
and for an example, Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
I think the way I would describe an 80s horror movie is the professional B movie.
Yes.
It is like that excess cheese done to such a professional level that it's tolerable. You look forward to it, and you can bet there's probably 5 or 6 sequels in the works. And they'll each be just as bad as the last in the best possible way.
Right. And I agree with that.
And that's very different from what I think 70s horror films are and 90s horror films are. But I think 80s horror films are the most fun. If you look at horror from any genre, they seem to you almost want to put a smile on your face as much as they want to scare you as well. And that doesn't change no matter how much time passes.
Agree. Gremlins. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I was deep in thought there. Gremlins, as much as
so this is where we're going to have that question too. What is a horror film?
What is a horror film?
Some of these belong on the
list.
Gremlins
a horror film, but it is classified as a horror film. But
we'll find out today. We will find out today. This is why people have tuned in for the ultimate guide to 80s horror movies. Okay, I'm going to bring up the first list. Now, neither you and I have seen these lists. I've simply done a Google search and found 3 or 4 different lists. And then I have one other. It's a list, but it's also looking at the highest grossing horror films for each year of the 80s. and I just want to see where those films rank within these lists as well. Okay, so
Okay.
we'll start with the first list. This is the top 55 horror films courtesy of Esquire. And Silver Bullet is the first one they mentioned. Is this a film that you have seen, and does it need to be included?
That is a film I've seen, and I do believe that needs to be included in all the lists.
Yeah.
Fantastic movie, great storyline. Again, kind of cheesy, over the top, B-rated style movie. It's got I can't even remember the Corey. I always get them confused, but whatever Corey it was that played the kid in the wheelchair, as the one that was fighting the werewolf. He did an amazing job in this. You got Gary Busey in it, who is always a character, and I absolutely love this movie.
Well, it'll be interesting to see that you say it needs to be on this list. It's not one that I've actually come across in my travels, so we'll see if there's something that isn't on the list, and if it deserves to be on the list, and which films have to get kicked off in order for its inclusion. So
Okay.
I'll take your word on everything on Silver Bullet. And going ahead, we're going to go to Christine, 83. So this is a Stephen King film. Obviously, it's a staple of the horror genre. And there's been nonstop Stephen King films ever since he started writing. And we've been able to see some adaptations of his work. Is this a top 80s horror film, you think, Christine?
I love Christine, but I have a few problems with
Sure.
the movie.
Okay.
So the main character, the guy that plays the car owner, I was not
Arnie Cunningham.
I was not much of a fan of his.
Okay.
I've never been much of a fan. I always thought he was just a little odd, and maybe that is what made Christine worked, but as an actor, I've just really never been much of a fan of his, and I wish they had gotten somebody different for that.
It's just like a haunted car, though. Like,
yeah,
it's the perfect premise for an 80s movie. It almost screams a little bit more of a Tales from the Crypt short to me.
Yes,
but I mean, obviously, it's a well-selling novel too. But
yeah, I don't think the movie did the novel justice.
Okay,
I don't think
sounds about right.
I would kick this off probably and bring others on if the list kind of.
All right, here we go. Another Stephen King one, Cujo.
Yeah, that's a terrifying movie. That is an absolutely terrifying movie. Especially for people that are dog lovers. I remember my dad watching this, and I was in the room, and all I could do was look over at the Dalmatian and be like,
oh, especially Dalmatians
no.
too, because Dalmatians can go sideways in a hurry. Before I became a dog owner, definitely scared. Now that I'm a dog owner, less so. Yeah. Right? Because I'm no dog whisperer, but I love dogs so much.
That was
the appeal
was
lost it on me. Movie. Yeah, I get it. The Lost Boys. Now, I think a lot of people are going to say, why is this so far down on the list and not closer to number one? Because The Lost Boys has a huge following.
Another Corey. I mean, with the same Corey as Silver Bullet.
Corey Haim,
Corey Haim. I always get those two confused, but it actually has both of the Corys in it. He's, Corey Haim's just
true. The main Corey.
The main character, the main Corey. But I agree. This needs to be closer to
one.
Closer to one. I mean,
even amongst vampire films, I think a lot of people would put it in the top 10.
Yeah, you've got an amazing actor in Kiefer Sutherland.
Alex Winter.
Who's
Bill from Bill and Ted.
Yeah, I think he did a fantastic job. Obviously the sax player. I'm Facebook friends with him, and I see all
amazing.
His. Yeah,
you're just amazing. Okay, we're moving on because you're too close to some of this. The Boogeyman, 1980. A young boy murders his mother's abusive boyfriend while his sister watches through a mirror. Years later, the mirror is broken, which should be fine, except the man's evil spirit was trapped inside, of course. To make matters worse, he's hell-bent on getting revenge.
Yeah.
You like the Boogeyman?
No.
Is Lost Boys better than the Boogeyman?
Oh, yeah. Lost Boys
I
way
agree.
Better than Boogeyman.
Okay, moving on. Motel Hell.
I have not seen that one.
Either have I love the concept already because this is almost like every motel that I've ever been to is Motel Hell. You recently dealt with Motel Hell in Houston not long ago.
Yeah.
Funhouse 81. What do you
LA.
think about Funhouse?
Funhouse, and I didn't see Funhouse.
No.
No.
Oh, this is some of the stuff that I think really House of a Thousand Corpse took some cues from. So I think you should go check this out.
I will.
It's as it says here, Texas Chainsaw Massacre director Tobe Hooper goes back to the deformed masked psycho with this entertaining 81 B movie. April Fool's Day. Is this one that you've seen?
Yes, I have seen that.
And
I would say no. It's not my style of fun horror movies. I don't even think it was really all that scary. It's just no. I would.
Before we go on with the list, I'm going to pause right here. What better be in the top 5 for you, or the top 3?
Top 5. Well, one of them is not in there, which is Lost Boys. I would say Lost Boys is probably is up there in the top 5 for me. The Thing needs to be in the top 5 for me.
Yeah.
My favorite will not be in the top 5. Probably will not even be on this list, which is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That would be number 1 for me. But again, that's not a lot of people were into that back then or now, so that probably isn't even making the list.
Right.
I'd say Nightmare on Elm Street. That was absolutely terrifying. I didn't even think that was a B movie style. That was just absolutely terrifying. As we got into the later Nightmare on Elm Street, they were horrible. They got worse as they went on. So I would say 1 and 2 is probably the best. Let me see. I'm trying to think. The Gate.
Sure.
That would probably be a top 10, maybe not a top 5 or top 3, but The Gate.
Okay. I'm hoping The Shining's in the top 3.
The Shining, yeah.
And Shining, The Fly. The Fly better be in the top 10.
Yeah. The Fly was an amazing movie.
Okay. Back to the list. I just wanted to get some predictions. There we go. The Gate, 47. And you're saying top tier stuff.
Yeah. And again, that's subjective because, to me,
we know it's subjective, but I want you to argue it.
Well, that was Stephen Dorff's first movie. I'm a big fan of Stephen Dorff.
Yeah.
I think the overall storyline wasn't really done all that much back then. It wasn't just your thrash and slash. It wasn't, it was a very dark storyline about, the kid's dog dying and then, them burying it and it becoming a sacrifice in this kind of cult, right? And opening a door to hell.
Oh,
and
that
all the
reminds
little
me, Pet Sematary should be in the top 10 too.
Yeah, Pet Sematary too. Yeah, Pet Sematary.
All right, moving on. My Bloody Valentine. What do you think?
My Bloody Valentine, I don't think it's going to be. It should be in the top 10, but it was definitely a good.
It belongs on the list. They have it at 46. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe 30 is where I'd put it.
Yeah.
I'd move.
I mean, they had some remakes. The remake was just as good as the original.
No. The original was better.
I like the remake.
I'm sorry to hear that. The remake was shot in Canada?
I did not know that.
There you go. Children of the Corn at 45. More Stephen King makes the list. This is the third one. I wonder how many Stephen King films will make the top 55. I'm guessing 6. So this is the third.
I know that Dead Zone will probably be on the list. That was.
Oh yeah, we might get close to 10.
Yeah.
Right. If we get Pet Sematary, The Shining, and Dead Zone plus these 3 already, then we'll get over and above already. Children of the Corn. Do you like this film?
Yeah, I like Children of the Corn. Anything with children is scary.
Creepy children. My son always seemingly goes out as this character that's on screen right now. He has the same hat and everything for Halloween. It's hilarious.
I can see him giving you those eyes. Yeah.
American Werewolf in London is at 44. That
needs to be
top 10, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the transformation sequence alone is amazing.
Yeah.
And I know that some of it hasn't aged as well, but it's so terrifying. And I mean, the fact that these American, backpackers are away from home and this stuff is happening, it just adds a nice layer of isolation and being an outcast and not fitting in. It's that needs to be higher. Bad Taste, 87. Peter Jackson.
So that's the Intergalactic Restaurant one. That was kind of a weird one. I don't even know if that should be on the list.
Well, again, horror defines a bunch of things. Clearly, it fits within that because of the B movie tropes, and it's gory, and it's over the top. Yeah, I don't know. I completely forgot about the next one on the list, Child's Play at 42. Of course, that's an 80s film, 80s slasher film at that has spawned tons of film sequels, a TV show, tons of merchandise, which shouldn't be surprising given it's based on a toy.
Definitely.
I feel like this might be top 10, top 15 for sure. Why is this so far down?
For me, it wouldn't be top 10, maybe in the top 20.
Yet we say we're friends.
My wife is the Chucky fan.
Well, we know that she's smarter than you, and that's okay.
Well, that's true.
All right, Pumpkinhead 41. Again, this feels like a top 21 for me. What do you think about Pumpkinhead?
Yeah, Pumpkinhead needs to be higher on the list.
The special effects are great. The story is simple, right? When the story is nice and simple and there's a motivation for the monster, the creature, or the horrific force, it all lines up and it makes sense. It becomes a much easier watch. And Pumpkinhead is, straight by the numbers, and it's just like this demon on the loose to kill this person who deserves to die.
Yeah. And a perfect example of what you're talking about, in today's, is Godzilla -1.
Haven't seen it yet.
I know you haven't seen it yet, but it's a very simple storyline. It works. And it was probably the most fantastic Godzilla movie that I've seen. And now going back and watching like Legacy of Monarch, it just seems so complicated and so convoluted that sometimes you just get lost, and not in a good way.
Well, this is the difference between a movie and a TV show, right? A TV show, you need lots of subplots that interconnect and all resolve and pay off. I'm so glad there wasn't a Pumpkinhead series.
Yeah, that's true. But even the new Godzilla versus King Kong, when I was watching the trailer, The New Empire, it just seemed it was like, really? I was like, okay. So, but yeah, I agree. Simple. This was simple and good.
Silent Night, Deadly Night. Now, this is a film that I feel was like on every cable network during Christmas time, in recent years, like in the last 20 years. It's like, oh, we'll put on Silent Night, Deadly Night. I don't know that this has aged well, and I don't know that I would put it at number 40.
This is one of those ones that my mom was like, no, you'll never watch this. And then so I always wanted to watch it. And then after I watched it, kind of in my teenage and in upper years, I was like, it's fun, but wasn't anything that, some of the new spinoffs that came from it, like Violent Night, and they've got a new Silent Night coming out.
Even Fat Man with Mel Gibson, right?
Yeah,
a little bit of a darker twist on Santa.
But Violent Night was absolutely amazing. I absolutely loved that. And but yeah, I don't know about Silent Night from the 80s. I don't know if it should be.
So here's an interesting entry that often gets debated amongst horror films, and that's Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, because of course it doesn't feature Michael Myers at all, but it's a Halloween film. What do you think of that departure, and is 39 fair for a threequel?
I don't know.
Have you seen
it? I wouldn't have even put it on the list, honestly, for me. And the reason being is that, all of a sudden you break from your traditional, what people are wanting to see, which is Michael Myers, which it's not a bad movie, but then in the fourth one, you throw him right back in, and it just felt like a completely different movie. And you're kind of wanting to, you're expecting one thing and you get a different thing, and it didn't hold up for me.
Yeah, taking the Halloween stuff out of the equation, I'm not sure that this should be 39 on the list. Maybe in the 50s somewhere, but not 39. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, Michael Rooker.
So that actually should be lower on the list. I have met Henry Lee Lucas when I worked at the
Cool.
prison. So, yeah, he is a very terrifying man, and especially having, uh, uh, you know, been in a situation to where I've met the man, not been put in a situation where I was in danger or anything. Yeah, this movie is horrific. And
What I love about a film like this is it really hits close to home, and that's where the horror comes in, right? Sometimes horror can come in just from an unnerving, situation or setting. Sometimes horror comes in because of the monster or the magic or supernatural. This is just something that's so real to life that it becomes scary
yes,
by virtue of the fact that it's true.
yeah, the fact he was putting chopped up bodies out in bags on the side for garbage men to pick up. Yeah, that was just kind of unnerving. There's a lot of people that have problems when they're driving down the road and they see garbage bag because they think they're going to hit a dog, or there's something wrong with a garbage bag being set out like that, and it kind of gives that real aspect to people's fears. And
Yeah, speaking of people's fears, the loss of a pet and the
yes,
thing that we would do to bring it back, especially a child's pet. Pet Cemetery at 37. Again, this should be much higher. Maybe it's because I was, 8 or 9 when I saw it, but it really struck a chord. And, it's not as good as the source material from everything I've heard. The reboots aren't as good as the original.
right.
The sequel is not good at all, I don't think. But this one feels like it should be higher.
I agree with that.
All right, moving on. Fright Night, 85.
I don't think that should be 36 over some of the other. I mean, it was a good movie. It was a good vampire movie. It was terrifying, but for me, like, there's certain things up on the list that should be kind of in front of this.
I find vampire movies, especially 80s vampire movies, usually either get it right or they get it wrong. And when they get it wrong, it's hard to really forgive a lot of the sins that they commit. And when it's hokey and it doesn't do the job across the stretch of the film, then it loses your interest and therefore falls on the list. So maybe it should be included in the top 50 list, but I don't know that 36 is the right spot. Day of the Dead. I know you're a fan of this one, right?
I am. Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Return of the Living Dead. I'm a big fan of all these movies. George A. Romano did a fantastic job with all of
Romero, not Romano.
Oh, Romero. I'm sorry.
Ray Romano's lost father, George Romano. Hey, Joey Image, what's up, brother?
What's
Thanks
up,
for
Joey?
tuning in, catching us. He says it's Robin Stone Cold Steve Austin live. Amazing.
But Romero. Romero, excuse me. He did a fantastic job with all these. They were terrifying. They were so good, even with the sequels and the different ways he portrayed each movie. I thought they were great. And I would agree with 35, 30s, maybe 20s.
It depends on your love for zombie films and if this one is as compelling as the ones that came before it or the other ones in the decade. I'd probably put it top 30. Top 30 feels right for me on this one. Opera, 87.
I haven't seen that one.
I haven't seen it either. I know of it, but I don't know what this film is about or the ins and outs. So I'm just going to say, okay, so be it. We'll leave it there. The Howling. This is one that we didn't mention, but obviously gets a lot of praise. Joe Dante and his werewolf film.
The Howling was great. Especially in this is one of those rare series of movies where the sequels seem to have gotten better. I really like the Howling movies, and especially when they started adding the circus elements into it, where he became an attraction and then the vampire was running in. I think that was number 4. The Howling was a good one. I don't know if it should be 33. I think it probably 20s for me.
It's a weird thing because some of these are iconic. I would call The Howling an iconic film and certainly important because of Joe Dante alone, who directed Gremlins as well. So I feel like some of these films have a legacy that bumps up their value just because of how they've been able to endure after decades and the reputation, because they keep coming up in conversations. And I think The Howling is one of those films, but if you were to look at it amongst other horror films, it's hard to really kind of place it. I want to say 20s or 30s. 33 is probably right, depending on what we see coming up on the list.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. The Stuff, 85. I don't know this one at all. Do you know
that was a great movie. So it's about a town where they're developing this. It's called the
yogurt-like
Stuff.
diet snack.
Yogurt-like diet snack. Yeah.
There's just one side effect. The Stuff turns consumers into zombie-like monsters.
Yeah.
The diet is taking the nation by storm, literally.
It was great. And then, the town goes after the company, and they're just recreating it. And it's just this ooze of stuff everywhere. And it was really good. It was kind of a combination of like The Blob and some of the other horror movies out there. It was a really good movie.
All right, moving on. Cannibal Holocaust. Again, this is one that like had this amazing reputation. Like, it was thought to be real, and then it was X-rated and you couldn't get it anywhere, which of course made everybody want to watch it more and like seek it out. But it's completely fake.
Yeah.
Given that the revelation of this stuff, how do you feel about Cannibal Holocaust? Does it deserve to be 31 on the list?
I don't know. That's one of those ones that it's just for me that subject matter's a little too much.
Yeah.
And I probably would never watch that movie again. And no.
Okay, well, just careful.
Probably bump it.
You don't have to bang on your desk so much. We're getting all the feedback with you hitting your mic.
Sorry, no, I didn't hit my mic.
We understand you're upset, but we just got to calm down a bit, okay? We're getting into the 30s. This is when the blood starts to boil. Here we go. The Hitcher. What do you think about The Hitcher?
I think it's your normal kind of psychotic trope.
It's a good take on a road movie.
It is,
and the dangers of hitchhiking, right? They say don't pick up any hitchhikers. You don't know what can happen.
Yeah, I mean, to me, is it one of the best movies? No.
Is it better than Lost Boys?
No, not at all.
Okay, so that's the barometer that we've established. Moving on, The Changeling, 80.
I haven't seen that one, but I heard it was really good.
It's a great haunted house tale. I can tell you that. You got to check it out. I think it's worthy of being in the top 30 for sure. Creepshow. So again, this is kind of a Stephen King one as well. So that might put us into the 7 or higher count, right?
Yeah.
Did you like Creepshow at all?
I did. I mean, I was never, a huge fan of Creepshow or some of those
like Tales from the Crypt, these anthology pieces
and stuff like that. Yeah, Twilight Zone. I was really never a huge fan of that.
Really, I thought you would love that stuff, given that some of it can be so hokey and some of it can be absolutely chilling.
Yeah, and so I guess where that lies is that I like to binge watch things, and some of the TV series of Twilight Zone and stuff like that, if I binge watch it too much, I'm really susceptible to dreaming about it. And
okay.
So sometimes it's with horror stuff, it's I watch it, I'm done for a little while, and so
that's fair. The only thing that kills me with this stuff is when they try to include like really well-known celebrities playing different kind of characters. So as the blurb here points out, highlighted in a short in which Leslie Nielsen gets revenge on Ted Danson by burying him up to his neck in sand. Like, it's hard to take serious as a big horror thing when that happens with those characters. You know? The Stepfather, 87. So again, classic film that has been remade a couple times. Did you like The Stepfather?
Yeah, that's just horrifying because it's fairly real to what people may go through. I mean, whether this is it's over the top in the movie or whatever, and the lengths at which I mean, abuse is one of those things that a lot of people kind of shy away from, even with horror films, and it's a little too realistic sometimes with with the storyline. So I would say Lost Boys is better than this.
What about The Beyond?
I have
I
not
don't
seen
know
the
the
Beyond.
Beyond. I haven't
Yeah, I
seen
haven't
it
seen the
either.
Beyond.
So by virtue of not seeing it, I'm taking it off the list now. That's my new
Okay.
rule. Creepshow 2, better than Creepshow 1, which is the common opinion. Have you seen Creepshow 2 and do you like it?
I believe I've seen Creepshow 2. I don't remember if I've watched that or not, but
I think the
so
shorts are much better in Creepshow 2.
yeah, I'll reserve my opinion because I don't remember if I've seen it or not.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Prince of Darkness 87. I have not seen this one. Have you seen it?
I have. It was a long time ago that I saw it. Again, probably not my favorite, so Lost Boys needs to be in front of this.
Fair enough. Hellraiser? You're a big Hellraiser fan.
I am a big Hellraiser fan. Oh my
23,
god.
is this fair or should it be higher, lower?
To me it should be higher.
Okay.
I think top 10. That was absolutely horrifying. You know, the amount of gore versus the storyline versus the just downright creepiness and haunting of, you know, these characters. um I think it should have been higher. You know, I was really excited about the remake that they did where they stayed truer to the source material. But yeah, this needs to be higher on my list.
It's
Like
a weird
top
thing for a
top
horror
10.
film too, because it's like tackling two different tropes. It's the cursed object and a specific monster. Usually
Yes.
when you have an object, it just unleashes evil like Pandora's box. It never really calls the specific thing. Sometimes you'll have an item used to summon a character, like in Pumpkinhead, right? But this is a little bit different. And the fact that they pulled it off and spawned how many different sequels, like it, something's good there.
Yeah, and I think what they did really well was they made Pinhead the leader, although he wasn't even called Pinhead in the source material, and
Right.
he wasn't even the leader. He was just, it was just a group of Cenobites that were coming to, torment.
Yes.
And so he wasn't even the main focus, and because of Doug's performance, and it just really elevated that that character, I think.
Friday the 13th at 1980. I feel like this is one that might divide some of our viewers. Does this belong higher on the list? Did they get it right? How do you feel about this one in particular?
So this, for me, it's just your common kind of thriller. I get why people were drawn to this, but it wasn't until the second one where they introduce Jason's character as a killer and a brutal force, that I actually really started liking the Friday the 13th. Just the fact that it was a mother going around killing people in a camp. Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying, but to me, Nightmare on Elm Street, Lost Boys, those are higher on the list than the very first Friday the 13th.
See, again, I think this is where legacy plays a huge role in wanting to propel this higher. I think it's a good film, and I think as a thriller and as a mystery, because you don't know who's doing the killing, you just get this like POV shot leading up to the deaths. I think it's very effective, and I think it's great. And I think what ends up happening is like, oh, there's this legend and this legacy that they've introduced within the film, and then they could take it wherever they want. Had this kind of tanked at the box office, I don't know that it would have had the spin-off, but there was enough backstory hinted at in those campfire legends that I think it works. I would put it in the top 20. They have it at 22. I can live with it. I want to see what's ahead of it, but I would like to see this in the top 20.
And here is why I think that this falls short, as Friday the 13th, the actual movie, rather than the legend. Is there's a lot of people nowadays, a lot of younger people and older people that, when you say Friday the 13th, who was the killer in Friday the 13th? They say Jason. It's like, no. Friday the 13th was the mother, and not a lot of people.
It was, spoiler alert.
Yeah, it's been spoiled for a long time. But not a lot of people remember that the mother was the killer in the very first one. So it kind of, the very first movie almost loses a sense of what it was because of Jason and the later movies, I think.
Sure.
I think everybody will go back and watch Friday the 13th because it's part of the series of movies. But, a lot of people, when you associate Friday the 13th, you think of Jason. Everybody wants the hockey mask. Nobody but not a lot of people remember the mother as being the killer.
Maniac. This is 21. You like it?
I don't remember that movie.
I don't remember it either. I always think of Maniac Cop 2 with Bruce Campbell.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of. I was like, Maniac. I was like, I think I've watched it. Why is Maniac Cop? Yeah.
Okay, and then here's Reanimator at 20. So now we're in the top 20. Reanimator. Jeffrey Combs.
I think Reanimator was a great movie. I think it needs to be higher on the list, probably in the top 10.
I like it as 20 because it gets okay after that. Yeah, I like it as number 20. Happy Birthday to Me.
I don't know that one.
19. I don't know that one either.
Yeah, just the title alone, I'd be like, eh.
Slumber Party Massacre. One I haven't seen, but one that I hear talked about often.
I don't remember. I think I've watched this one, but I don't remember.
Nathan, I brought you in here, Tater, as my expert of 80s.
I have not watched every 80s horror movie there is.
You know what? Let's get Cindy. Let's get Cindy because I'm sure you're going to help me out here.
I don't think she's watched this one.
She's seen all of these.
The only reason why people are probably watching this is because back in the 80s, showing girls running around in skimpy clothes was a thing for the horror movies, and a lot of people. Oh yes, it was. It was.
No,
and that's probably why it made the list.
Okay. Well, we're moving on.
Lost Boys
Sleepaway Camp. Lost Boys better. Sleepaway Camp. Okay, so this was something I didn't know until I got into college, and then I discovered Sleepaway Camp. Again, it's the cabin in the woods kind of thing, done a bajillion times. What do you think of Sleepaway Camp?
Lost Boys is better.
Oh, I think Sleepaway Camp's
better. Well, just take the guy in the shirt.
And so here, as soon as I said it, I thought, here's one movie that both you and I didn't mention in our top 5, and they have it at 16, and that's Evil Dead, the first one.
That needs to be in the top 10 for sure.
Is Lost Boys better?
No, I don't think Lost Boys is better because I think Lost Boys is probably a better story overall. But
if you could only have one film forever, would it be Evil Dead or Lost Boys?
It'd probably be Evil Dead.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm a bigger Evil Dead fan than a Lost Boys fan.
Okay, so here we go. Maniac Cop 1. I haven't seen it.
So Maniac Cop, that needs to be like, I think Evil Dead and Lost Boys is better than Maniac Cop.
Yeah,
I think The Gate is better than this.
That's fair. Yeah. Poltergeist. Okay, so this was another one I was thinking about as we were building our list, and we mentioned people like Tobe Hooper. Of course, Steven Spielberg came in and finished directing duties and helped as well. But where does Poltergeist sit on you? I think this is a top 10 film for me.
Yeah, I was going to say probably top 3 for me. This
top
movie,
3.
Yeah, this movie gave
Carol Ann.
Yes, Carol Ann. This movie gave me the creeps. I've probably watched this and a handful of other movies the most out of any horror movie.
We recently showed Harrison Poltergeist, and he was like into it. And unfortunately, I took him out of it with a comment I made. I said, "Hey, you know the dad?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "That's Mr. Incredible." He's like, "Oh yeah." And then like it just completely lost the scares for him because all they could think of is Mr. Incredible now in Poltergeist universe. Gremlins at 13. Okay, so what do we think about this?
I think it's a great movie, but again, so is this it's classified as a horror movie, but is this
it
really
is creatures that come and try to kill people. I don't know that anybody actually dies, though.
No, I don't think anybody actually dies. Well, I mean, the creatures do.
It is a Christmas movie, or it takes place at Christmas.
I don't know. That's kind of a hard one for me because I love Gremlins, but as a horror movie at 13,
Joe Dante, Spielberg, Chris Columbus, it's a good, top 15 for sure if we're gonna say it's a horror movie. And again, it's one of those things where like the sequel I thought is way better than the original, even though I wouldn't consider the sequel a horror movie and much more comedy. There's too much comedy in this for me to consider it a horror movie. Not that can't be said about other films on the list that obviously inject a lot of comedy, but this is just highly comedic and cutesy.
Yeah, and I think The Evil Dead did the same thing, where the first one was extremely horrific. The second one, a little bit of comedy and horror, and then the third one was just nothing but, comedy. I mean,
Yeah.
there was nothing scary about, Army of Darkness, and yeah. So a lot of the horror movies from the '80s that had multiple movies did that, and I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what lost a lot of its appeal for me as far as the sequels is.
I agree. Moving on then. The Fly at 12. No, this should be in the top 3 for me. I understand why there are probably other films out there. This is one of my favorite films of all time. Yes, I know it's a remake, but it is done just so incredibly well. Yes, I'm biased because I'm Canadian and David Cronenberg is a Canadian filmmaker and it was shot in Toronto. But it is a great, like what I call a 3-hander, where there's only like 3 people, limited locations where most of the action takes place. And it's just terrifying, right? Like, it's no wonder that I love Jurassic Park as much as I do, given that I love The Fly. It's like science gone wrong. Like the promise of a better tomorrow, thanks to science, gone horribly wrong. Tell me you love The Fly as much as I do.
I do. That needs to be in the top 10.
Yes, Brundlefly for the win.
Yeah, I think Cindy watched it for the first time, I think a couple of years ago. I think
she must have loved it.
Her and I watched it together, and I mean, she's huge into horror, obviously. She's not so much the 80s horror person, but horror in general, and she liked this movie.
Have you guys seen the second one, the sequel?
Oh yes, I have. I don't know if she has, but I have.
I like it. It's very different from the first one, but I think it's actually pretty good. And upon like watching it subsequent times, I've learned to appreciate it more. Near Dark, 87. I don't know this one at all.
I don't know this one at all either.
Oh, it's so high on the list. I feel like we've missed the boat on so many films here, and that's why I love doing these lists, because it's like I think I have a good hold, a good grapple on the topic that we're about to go down, and inevitably there's so many of these examples on the list that I don't know, and I feel like, well, I can't really discount them unless there's some rule that I've made up. But when something is like 11 on a list of 55, it's got to be pretty good, and it's directed apparently by Catherine Bigelow, who directed The Hurt Locker, of course, and it has Lance Henriksen and Bill Paxton in it,
and Jeanette Goldstein. They all 3 of them, I believe. Jeanette Goldstein was in Aliens with the 2 of them. So
that's right. They're all in Aliens, which is hilarious. So
and she was in Terminator, along with what's
Michael Biehn.
Michael Biehn.
Yep. Well, we almost got to owe it to ourselves to check it out now.
Yeah.
Videodrome, another Cronenberg film at 83. What a weird film. Did you like Videodrome?
I don't remember ever watching that.
No?
No. Did you see it?
Yeah, it's required viewing if you're Canadian.
It's required.
It's early Cronenberg, right? So The Fly, I find, is when Cronenberg really kind of cements himself across the board for a bunch of different things. But stuff like Shivers from the 70s and then Videodrome, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'll check it out.
A year after Poltergeist suggested television was a disruptive force in the American family, David Cronenberg suggested that it was a conduit toward a new flesh in Videodrome, a madness-infected film about a Canadian TV station owner, James Woods, who stumbles upon, to his eternal hellish hallucinatory dismay, a broadcast of Red Room torture.
Oh,
kind of like think the Ring, but psychological horror.
Yeah,
to a degree. Yeah. Tenebrae. Did you ever see this?
I did not see that,
but it's number 9 on the list. Dario Argento's best film in the superlative Giallo from 1982, in which an American writer well in Rome to promote his new book becomes embroiled in a police case about a serial killer whose methods may be modeled after those found in his novel, which seems to be a familiar trope. Few horror films have ever been this vividly awash in issues of twisted sexuality, voyeurism, gender power dynamics, mirror image doubling in the role between artist and spectator. Don't know it, can't comment on it. The Fog.
That was great. I love The Fog.
At number 8, though.
No, probably not at number 8. It needs to be higher in the list. Probably top 20. For me, yeah, I think Lost Boys is better.
Okay. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, 86.
No, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was way better. To me, I think than part two. I think
I don't like this film at all. I don't know. I wouldn't put it on my list.
yeah, I don't think part two should be on the list. I mean, if you're gonna put, but I think Chainsaw Massacre was a '70s movie. I
That's
believe it
right.
was '70s,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't be on this list. But yeah,
Again,
the sequels to this, they were horrible.
yeah. Again, just an example of sequels going comedic instead of trying to be more scary. I don't know if that's just fear of trying to you can't one up it or what the deal is, but here we go. Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. Now I know a lot of people prefer Evil Dead 2 because it's so much of the first film already than the comedic take. Do you have Evil Dead 2 as number 6 or do you like the original more?
I think I like the original more, but I would say that Evil Dead 2 is, I mean, right there.
Yeah. Responding to our chat, don't you know Dario Magneto? No, I don't know Dario Magneto. Oh, Argento. Yeah, I know Dario Argento. I just didn't know that film in particular, which is, clearly a huge gap in my cinema loving brain. I'm gonna have to get that figured. So you don't think Evil Dead 2, sorry, is as good as Evil Dead 1?
No, if you're gonna, they'd probably be pretty close on the list for me. But I think for me, Evil Dead 1, then Evil Dead 2. When coming to a horror movie, I like the horror more than the comedy.
What I like about Evil Dead 2 is I find that there's a lot better scenes that I appreciate more in Evil Dead 2, like all the animal heads coming to life, the bridge being all twisted, like just there's certain aspects I like, but as a film as a whole, I find I'm more engaged in Evil Dead 1 and able to watch all the way through. But there are just scenes and elements that I can appreciate on their own in Evil Dead 2. Here we go. The top 5, Nightmare on Elm Street, number 5.
That would probably be in my top 3 with Poltergeist.
I agree. It's got to be higher for so many reasons. Just the concept alone that you can't go to sleep because you'll be killed in your dreams.
Yeah. This movie scared me more than any other movie to date.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And continues to be good regardless of what you think of the sequels. I think it's quality. Possession, number 4.
No.
I haven't seen it.
No.
How have I not seen this? I like Sam Neill and everything.
Yeah, I like Sam Neill too, but for me, Possession, Lost Boys was better than this.
Aliens, the sequel. Why is this in here as a horror film? I mean, I guess it's got to be, right? Because it's monsters and stuff, and it is scary, and you're in an enclosed, confined space. You can't escape, and you're surrounded by monsters.
I think this is more of a horror film than Gremlins.
I think it's more of an action film. To me, it's like a military action film, first and foremost. Whether it's soldiers or monsters that you're trying to escape, it just feels like it's more of an action film than a monster movie. And I get it. There's tons of xenomorphs everywhere. Believe me, it just doesn't.
I remember my mom coming back from watching this with my stepfather at the movies, and like she was so disturbed that she could not operate the rest of the day after seeing this back in the 80s.
Wow.
Yeah.
I also think probably because it's the sequel that the fear of the monster isn't as great, even though there's like hundreds of them by comparison. Right. Where the first one was so scary because, don't make a sound or you're dead kind of thing.
This is like, you couldn't kill one of them, let alone in this one, they're killing them off by droves.
Let the bullets ring out. It doesn't have the same fear factor for me. Like it's just not as scary. So
I think Alien would be higher on the list.
The Thing, 82. So this is one that you and I both appreciate. I think you said top 3 or top 5 for sure.
I think top 5. Honestly, I'm going to have to move Poltergeist to top 5 and put this in top 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can make that adjustment. Is this better than Lost Boys?
Yes, this is better than Lost Boys.
That's right. We got a question in chat. Is it fair to compare films you saw as a kid versus as an adult? Yeah, of course. In fact, most of the time when I see the films as an adult, I appreciate them more. And I don't think there's any of these films that I've seen as a kid that I haven't gone back and watched as an adult. I think that's one of the greatest parts of horror films is the power to bring you back for that experience again, whether you're sharing it with somebody for the first time or whether you just want to re-experience it at a different point in your life. With horror films, I go back and watch them probably more than any other genre.
Yeah, same. And if it can, you can have that same response as an adult that you had as a
Yeah,
kid, then there's something that was right with that movie. There was
I
something that
agree.
just was point on. And if you look at it and you're like, okay, this is stupid. Yeah, as a kid, maybe it was like one of the most horrific or better movies, but it just didn't hold its wow factor. And
Yeah,
so for me, those kind of get bumped up on the list,
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. If you guys have questions in chat and you guys are watching, throw a comment out there. We're happy to get to it. We're almost done here. Number one.
Well, hang on before we move on. I
Oh,
think one of
we
the
moved on. We moved on. What do you need?
I was going to say I think one of the best things about this and why it was so horrific is you never knew who was that imposter or the thing.
And you still
And
don't know really at the end. There's some suggestions and there's some fan
confirmed
theories.
They confirmed it that you could tell because he didn't
The eye
have
color?
breath. Yeah, no, the breath. One of the characters had, you could see the breath coming out in the cold. The other did not. And they said that the director had confirmed that John Carpenter had confirmed that that's how you could tell. And
Okay.
but yeah, I thought that was absolutely an amazing movie. Sorry, go ahead. We can move.
No, it's okay. I didn't like the remake either. And we're saying here, Nomad Media, I clearly missed out avoiding horror as a kid. I don't think you missed out. And I think, sometimes you get pulled in nostalgically to rewatch stuff because you appreciated it a lot as a kid. But save a few examples like Critters and I was going to say Tremors. That's in the 90s. I don't know. Yeah. I like most of the horror films I got to see. I don't think there was anything that I thought was routinely bad that I've, upon subsequent viewing, agreed that it was bad. Yeah, but I also don't think I probably saw enough horror films to really have like a massive knowledge of 80s horror cinema, which is why I bring an expert on to try to help out. Number one, The Shining.
Shining, I think it needs to be number one.
Top 3 for sure. It's my favorite film on this list, hands down. Squeaks into the decade right at the beginning. I don't know. I love it. I don't know what else to say, but there's a lot. I mean, there's been documentaries made about this film. We know that Stephen King hated the adaptation. We know that it was very tough for the cast. But dang, if it isn't effective and scary and psychological and visceral and just makes you want to have repeat viewings, and you still find something every time. Like, what more can you ask for from a movie?
Yeah, and it's still, with us, whether it be in memes, whether it be in like Ready Player One, where they're using it, as part
which wasn't in the book, but it works in the movie.
No, yeah, I mean, it works in the movie. I mean, it's it's still a very recognizable movie, and it's still being used throughout, even today, So it was a great movie.
Yeah, I want to jump to another list just by comparison, just to see which one am I going to do. We'll do this one just to see how it stacks up to that list, because I don't know that I love that list, but we're going to see how this is top 20s. This is from Screen Rant. So they start with Children of the Corn at 20. The other list had it like in the 40s, I believe.
Yeah, I agreed with where the other list had that.
Motel Hell, this is at 19. The other one had it much higher. I think it was like 9 or something, or 11. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, they have it at 18. The other list had it in the 40s or the 30s. What's
their obsession with that movie?
Pumpkinhead at 17, so it was much higher. I think I wanted it in the 20s, and the other list had it in the 40s. So interesting there. The Company of Wolves. I don't know this one at all. Neil Jordan, who directed Interview with the Vampire, of course. Don't know this one at all. Okay, interesting. Hellraiser at 15 on this one.
Used to be in the top 10.
And Friday the 13th, the first one at 14.
But here,
but this image is
the first one, and
they
give the image of Jason.
Yeah, I know. Suddenly at Midnight, 1981. This is an international film. I don't know at all. It predates Child's Play by a few years. Same concept by the looks of it. Street Trash, 87 at number 12. Do you know Street Trash?
I do not.
I love that there's a bunch of curveballs in this one. Wicked City at 11. Do you know Wicked City?
No, I don't know Wicked City at all.
Oh, it's a combination of horror, sci-fi, and fantasy. Interesting. Nightmare on Elm Street at number 10. It drops 5 points. Number 10 on this list.
This is a Wish.com list.
Evil Dead at number 9, so up from 16 to 9 on this list.
I agree more with this list on that. I thought it needed to be in the top 10. So
Child's Play at 8. Top 10 is what I think I said before, top
Yeah.
15, so I don't mind this inclusion. Changeling at 7.
I didn't see that one. So
Yeah, again, it's iconic. Possession at 6.
no.
I clearly I have to go get this film and check it out. And
Yeah, I'll have to watch it again. But
here we go. Dario Argento again, Tenebrae.
I've never seen it, so
Again, that's another one we got to watch. Mata, Mike DeLeon. Do you know this one?
I do not.
I love this. Okay, The Thing at number 3. I love.
Yeah, see, there we go.
There's 6 or 7 already in this top 20 that we haven't listed, so that's cool. So The Thing at number 3. What's going to be number 2 and what's going to be 1? Is it going to be Aliens and The Shining? Is it going to be Shining?
It'll be Alien.
No, Opera. Interesting. There you go. Dario Argento is again, and then The Shining at number 1. Crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, what I want to do now, so you don't have to go through another Wish.com list, is I'm going to share with you the top grossing horror films from every year within the 80s.
Okay.
And we're getting a comment here. Classic Anime Wicked City. Remember all the ads in the UK video game mags for it. Awesome. I got to add it to my list. That's wicked. This is why I love doing this. Not because I think I'm an expert in this, but because I love to go back and rediscover, argue a little bit with the list, bring on a friend, and see what I'm missing out on. Because I know I haven't seen everything.
Yeah, and the one movie that I told you wasn't going to be on there that's my favorite wasn't on any of the lists.
Wow. Maybe it'll be on this. Maybe it'll be the highest grossing film of
it was not the highest grossing film.
Are you sure about that?
Yes, I guarantee you it was not the highest grossing film.
All right, here we go. 1980, The Shining was the highest grossing film. Two horror films grossed significant amount of money in 1980, The Shining and Friday the 13th. So this was the highest grossing film. The American Werewolf in London in 81. Again, that wasn't even on that top 20 list, but it was the number 1 grossing horror film of 81. Poltergeist 82. Again, left off that list. Jaws 3D in 83. Should that have been on any of the lists?
Is that really a horror movie? I mean, if we're talking in the sense
it is, it's a monster, right?
Yeah, but
it's a monster movie.
I mean, it should have been on the list if it's considered a horror movie. I think Jaws is better than some of the other, like this. Even as much as I like the stuff, Jaws should have been in a higher number than the stuff.
Sure. Gremlins 84. Talked about that. Fright Night 85.
Wow.
86 Aliens. 87 Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors.
That was a really good one. It wasn't as horrific as 1 and 2 and as scary, but the storyline I think brought in a real aspect of the drug abuse, and that was a really good storyline.
88 Nightmare on Elm Street 4 The Dream Master. It's the top horror films 2 years in a row. 89 Pet Sematary, of course, and then that'll be it. So there's that list. So how do you think that stacks up? Does it just say that films are hyped but they don't really end up, or is it a mixed bag? What do you think when it comes to
like with the I think a lot of those movies needed to be on that list if they're the highest grossing.
That doesn't mean it's a good film.
Well,
like, how many films
doesn't mean that it's a good film, but all of those films were pretty damn good films.
Pretty good, but
yeah,
most of them were not in the top 20 list.
No,
especially the 2 Nightmare on Elm Street ones. They weren't even mentioned in the top 55. So that's the hype train at work, I think, in sequelitis. So there you go.
I would prefer like some of those Nightmare on Elm Streets over some of the films that were on that list. So it's all subjective, and some of these lists are just, I don't know.
Wish.com lists.
Wish.com lists.
Lost Boys was better, was the other big takeaway today.
Lost Boys better.
Any last thoughts on 80s horror cinema and the ultimate guide, the trip down memory lane that we just took for that decade of scary movies?
Yeah, I remember first time I ever. So my parents were with some friends in the other room, and I was watching TV, and they were just pretty much ignoring me. Well, Nightmare on Elm Street came on, and I remember watching it. It was pretty late at night. It was probably 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I was allowed to stay up late. And I remember it coming on, and I wasn't supposed to watch it. I was told not to, so I started watching it. Oh man, they had to deal with me for the rest of the night. I ruined the entire night. I was so petrified. I saw Freddy Krueger outside my window through the blinds every night for months.
The only story I'll be able to relate to that is ever since I saw The Shining, ever since I've seen it, I've been fascinated with hotels that I've gone to, wondering if they're possessed or if any tragedies had occurred there. And it's still on my bucket list to visit the actual Overlook Hotel in Denver, the Stanley Hotel. I can't wait to one day check it out. They even have a screenwriting conference there that they do. So what better way to combine work and play and not sleeping at night?
That's cool.
All right, man. Well, thanks for joining me on the ultimate guide to 80s horror cinema. Again, check out Planet Cool Stuff on Kickstarter. 13 episodes, your chance to get a DVD, Blu-ray, an awful sketch from me, which I promise to do not a great job on, not because it's going to be bad, but just because I don't have the artistic skill. But it'll be one of a kind just for you. And you can get your name in the credits of all 13 episodes. Or if you want to be a heroic sponsor of your company, your brand logo at the beginning of every episode, this is your chance. Thousands upon tens of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands and millions of people will check out this series. And that could be great exposure for your brand. So from my good friend Tater, the toy guy, I'm Ron McCallum. See you guys next time. Cheers.
Bye, guys.